When you watch enough anime, especially when you're a seasonal binge watcher like I am, certain thoughts start to pop up in your mind with more and more frequency. Thoughts like, this was done better in that other show, or I've seen this 1,000 times already. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I am someone who tries out every single show, which means that I end up dropping far more shows than I finish because there's simply not enough time to finish everything. Nor do I even want to finish the shows I don't enjoy. Like, do I really need to watch another season of a show whose plot I don't particularly care for just because it's really popular or because the animation is really fast and flashy? I can get flashy fight scenes in a ton of other places, right? Am I really gonna stick with a show primarily because of the animation? It might sound overly critical, because it is, but I think it's a question a lot of people end up asking themselves at one point. Anime is a visual medium, but it's also a narrative one. And while I can't say what proportion they make up, some people are mostly here for the plot, so animation kinda becomes secondary to them. For me, it's a lot harder to watch a well-animated series with a bad plot than one that's not so well animated but still has great writing. And so, at some point, a thought crossed my mind that maybe the animation is secondary to me as well. And then I watched Yama no Susume. And the more I watched, the more I came to realize that my previous assertions might be very, very wrong. To be clear, I don't dislike the story elements of this series. I found most of it to be very charming and thoughtful in how the characters grow and interact, though I won't deny that some parts are a bit too slow for my liking. But the reason that I cite this anime specifically is because I simply have not seen a single other anime that achieves the same style or feats of animation as this one. Now, you could easily apply this to any anime that doesn't have a traditionally anime aesthetic. Kuchuburanko, most Yuasa projects, any assortment of short films, you get the picture. But Yama no Susume is not an avant-garde art house project. It's a cute girls do cute things series about mountain climbing with a pretty standard aesthetic for its genre. But that's the only thing about this series that is standard on the visual level. This is by far the most meticulously crafted and visually impressive series of its kind I've ever seen. A series where the eccentricities of the individual animators are practically exploding out of the screen. This element is most obvious in the character acting, which provides no shortage of delightful little cuts that truly bring these characters to life. Whether it's the visual gestures that accompany dialogue, or the weight with which these characters move around, there's something tantalizingly real about the physicality of their movements. Something so incredibly lifelike that it truly makes me wonder how they managed to accomplish this. Aside from raw animation talent, the layouts and general construction of each shot also go a long way in supplementing this realism. It's a shame that this element of anime production doesn't get discussed that much unless you really get into the weeds of it, but being able to construct a well-realized 3D space in 2D animation, in which characters are allowed to move around with almost complete freedom, is one of the things that can elevate a cut from being good to being incredible. And Yama no Susume's mastery of this allows it to pull off some insanely cool angles by which we can view a given scene. Simply being able to craft cool character animation is one thing, but being able to do it from a perspective that's rarely seen in TV anime is something else entirely, and adds an extra layer of visual captivation to this production. And then there are the moments that aren't particularly realistic, but instead pull out all the artistic embellishments they can muster to portray something truly special. The Firefly scene in Season 2 is one that springs to mind right away. The over-accentuation of the Firefly's luminescence, the way the hyper-detailed blends with the abstract, the subtle excitement conveyed through their facial expressions, the sheer vastness of it all, it's one of the most visually impacting scenes from any anime I've ever seen. one of the few scenes that I will actively rewatch by itself just to experience that sense of wonder and joy all over again. Even the background art took me completely by surprise. To be honest, I'm rarely blown away by moments where anime try to realistically replicate the natural beauty of the world, with most attempts barely mustering a, well, that's pretty neat, from me. I tend to gravitate much more towards stuff with an abstract slant, stuff that's deliberately crafted to not be realistic at all in order to create an impact. So, after saying all of that, I hope my words carry a bit more weight when I say that the background art in Yamano Susume has blown me away time and time again. Whether it's the massive expanse of land viewed from atop the mountains, or the intimate enclosures of a forest, this series consistently has some of the strongest background art I've seen all year. Impeccable control over color design, a natural competence with framing, the way sunlight adds the perfect accent to certain moments, the sheer amount of detail. There's so much visual variety that's so on point so often that whatever they decide to put on screen almost always seems to turn out wonderful. I'm sure some of this also has to do with how it's set up in the story, with the mountaintop views in particular being a reward for the character's physical accomplishments, but that doesn't take away from how well constructed these shots are even in isolation. In my mind, there is no other competition for beautiful depictions of nature in anime. Now, by no means is this show's animation flawless. It certainly has more than its fair share of rough patches, between off-model faces and moments where the characters stand out a bit too much from the backgrounds. Yet, in spite of these shortcomings, this series still has some of the most unique and captivating animation and cinematography that I've seen all year. Yamano Susume is a truly special production that, by all rights, should not exist in the form that it currently does. We're already on the 4th season of a fairly niche slice of life series, and yet it still manages to produce some of the strongest animation of the year in an already immensely stacked anime season, solely because of its animation prowess and how expertly that animation is implemented. It has become a truly one-of-a-kind anime. I can't get something like Yamano Susume anywhere else. And after watching so much of it and then turning my gaze back to this season at large, I realized it's not the only one. I can't get something like Bocchi the Rock anywhere else, with how heavily it makes use of insanely off-the-wall moments of quirky and explosive animation, some moments not even being traditionally animated at all. I can't get something like Mob Psycho 100 anywhere else, with how it's willing to work with traditionally unattractive character designs to go as wild with cinematography and animation talent as its staff possibly can. I can't get something like Pop Team Epic or Do It Yourself or even Pokemon anywhere else. Even shows that I thought had good but ultimately forgettable animation have their own unique attributes that make them one of a kind in one way or another. Because being able to craft a unique animated identity is one of the things that makes anime so damn cool. In regards to my opening statements in this video, I was wrong. And I'm not afraid to admit that, because shows like Yamano Susume have opened my mind up to a whole new world of possibility when it comes to enjoying new stories from my favorite medium of entertainment. Does that mean that everything is at the same level of uniqueness and intrigue? Of course not. There are still plenty of shows that really have no visual identity to them whatsoever. That's not the lesson I've taken from this experience. Instead, it's to stop downplaying good animation simply because it's attached to a mediocre plot. Because being able to create something that looks this cool really is a feat on its own. And going forward, I want to show my appreciation for this medium as much as I possibly can. Special thanks to Rourketon Joing, Chris Adilli, Ryan Johnson, and all my other patrons for their generous support. My name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.